The colors don't even match. And now I look like a Chad on spring break. This was everywhere. I didn't like it as much as Throne of Glass, at least as a first book. Like if you compare it, I don't have my paperback of Throne of Glass, but that's okay. You can pretend I'm holding it right here. Maybe I'll put it on there in post. I did not like it as much as Throne of Glass as a first book. I don't know, obviously I don't know about the rest of the series, we're getting there. And I know everybody hated the cover change, but I didn't buy the old ones, and I really like these new covers. If you somehow don't know what ACOTAR is, it is about a 19-year-old girl. She's kind of a hunter, very Katniss vibes. She goes out hunting, kills a wolf, thinks it might be a fairy, turns out it is a fairy. And then another fairy comes and steals her and takes her back to the fairy world because he could either kill her for breaking this law treaty thing that they have, or he could take her in. Turns out he takes her in not to be slave or anything like that. He just has her live in his house, and he seems quite nice. His name is Tamlin. This girl, her name is Feyre, has to live among the fae. This is one of those pretty intense, I will not fall in love with this person despite them being super attractive type of stories, but there's a lot going on in the background, and I can see another war being set up. This fae, Tamlin, who's still our main character, he's like overlord of the spring court. The cat is sniffing the microphone. Oh, someone needed attention. There's a blight over the entire kingdom, and there's this ominous she that we get to meet later who has done this to everybody, and part of the blight is that all of the fairies in the spring court have masks attached to their faces. That's kind of a long story, but you know, it works with the Beauty and the Beast like trope of like she can't see the real him. Though I had a hard time picturing her like being like, oh, he's so attractive, but then he's also wearing like this big mask that covers his whole face. If you have not read this, the first one is pretty short, so you can get through it fairly fast. But like with all series, especially in the Sarah J. Maas Cassandra Clare category, each book does get bigger. This is a commitment. I guess I've committed at this point, but if you have read it, stick around, because I'm going to go into a bunch of spoilers and talk about this. If you have not read it, goodbye. Do not spoil yourself. So we meet Feyre. She's the youngest child. She's providing for the rest of her family. Her family was very rich, came by some troubles. Their ship sank or something like that, and the father is injured, basically gave up. The older sisters are kind of just in a state of denial, and so that leaves Feyre to provide for her entire family and learn how to hunt. And she realizes that this wolf that she sees in the forest, his pelt is going to be worth a lot of money, so she kills it, even though a part of her is like, I'm pretty sure that's a fairy. So because Feyre has killed a fairy, someone comes to collect her debt, because they have this treaty between the fae and the human world that they are not going to attack each other because of some war in the past. And the fairy decides to take her hostage after breaking into her house in wolf form and terrorizing her whole family. And she's about to go. And first of all, her family is just kind of letting her go. And then her father literally is like, never come back. And I get it. Part of it, that's kind of caring because their current life is bad. But at the same time, I think I would be a little bit offended if my entire family realized I was getting kidnapped and they were like, never come see us again. A lot of these first chapters, there's a lot of scenes in the dining room where Feyre is dining with the guy who took her, Tamlin, this fae, and his friend, Lucian. And it's really interesting because Tamlin is trying to like compliment her. And I was like, okay, something's gotta be going on here because like we've skipped the enemies part of enemies to lovers, if that's the trope we're going for, because he's trying to get her to like him right from the start. He's like, your hair is clean. What a compliment. So we're getting these inklings that Tamlin has special powers that the other fae in his court do not have. He could shift into a wolf. The wolf that Feyre killed was actually only able to shift into a wolf because Tamlin allowed for that to happen. He kind of like lent his powers. There was a moment when I actually believed that her father was coming to save her, and I fell for that ghost fairy thing as fast as Feyre did. She saw her dad outside the castle. I'm like, how did this man even get here? And it turns out it's one of these crazy fairy things that it sounds like they'll eat you. I don't really know. Did we cover that? Tamlin finds her, and he seems to find her anytime she's about to get into something that is bad for her. She's like, my dad's right over there, and he's like, look again, and it's this creepy fairy thingy shifting into different things that she might want. Feyre tends to be eavesdropping a lot, and she hears Tamlin talking to Lucian about this bog fairy that's like on the loose in their zone. What's it called? In their court. And this is becoming a regularly recurring thing. Whereas their wards used to be able to keep out the bad fairies, it's not working anymore because of the blight. You know, she's still not exactly sure about him, even though he saved her life multiple times at this point. He takes her to the study. She wants to write a warning note to her family, and she can't spell. That was right before her parents lost all their money and before her mom died, she was like trying to learn how to read because she wasn't a wealthy family, but she was so young when they lost all their money that she never got the education her sisters have. For some reason, they never teach her to read. So Feyre decides she wants to go trap a demon that will tell her more about, you know, the old war and this treaty between the Fae and the humans. And Lucian tells her how to do it. And he says he's starting to like her for a murdering human because, as we remember, she did murder one of his best friends. Lucian said he would come help her if she was in trouble. He hesitated when she screamed for help. Because when she captured this cereal thing and it told her to stick close to Tamlin, the Naga found her, the other fairies, and were attacking her. So who has to come and save her but Tamlin? Because Lucian is a double-crossing meanie. What she does find out something during this encounter is that Tamlin is the High Lord. And so that's like a prince or like a king of a certain section of the fairy lands. And even though he saved Feyre's life again, she can tell that he isn't feeling triumphant when he kills these fairies. Like, rather, he's just feeling defeated all the time because all these bad fairies are leaking into his lands and he can't stop it from happening because of this blight. It's very cute because Tamlin asks her what she wants and she says she wants to paint. He says there's a gallery in the house. The gallery is basically Tamlin's version of the library in Beauty and the Beast. And the whole time, even from the very beginning, she has always loved to paint and create things, and she notices the textures and colors in very detailed ways. And she says it's just like a useless part of her because, you know, she's providing for her family. She's trapped in this fairyland. The last thing that she finds useful is thinking about art. But it's really cute because Tamlin's gonna show her gallery and gonna buy her paints and stuff. And he pretty much explains that her family isn't starving without her. Like, he's managed to take care of them financially better than Feyre could have. And so she kind of feels this little bit of guilty, but still freedom that, you know, if she's gonna be here, if she's just gonna have to stay near Tamlin in this giant house, like, why not utilize that time for herself? She's never had time for herself. When Tamlin and Lucian and Feyre go to that meadow place, and Tamlin asks her, do you like it? And she's saying yes. And he's like, that's it, yes? Would you like me to grovel with gratitude for bringing me here, High Lord? And he's like, okay, so the cereal, you know, told you that I'm the High Lord. And she says, he also said that you like being brushed, and if I'm a clever girl, I might train you with treats. And then Lucian's like, I'm gonna die. Feyre made a joke. And we also, at this point, they go off to go swimming, and we kind of learn a little bit about Lucian's background, despite his being, you know, the kind of comedic relief of this book. He is the youngest of the Autumn Court, like the 7 brothers, and they're very cruel. Lucian fell in love with someone who wasn't, you know, good enough for the bloodline, and Lucian's father killed the girl he was going to marry. And his brothers made him watch. Like, we find out a lot about the brothers in this book, and they are horrible, horrible people. And Tamlin says, like, that's kind of why Lucian is now his emissary, like, he took him out of that life. Feyre kind of opens up and explains that they lost all their money when she was 11, and then even then, like, they still had some money to get by on, but when that ran out, that's when she turned to hunting, and she really dislikes it. And then he kisses her, and you know, the mask kind of ruins it for me. We haven't even seen this guy's face. Maybe that's the point. We're supposed to love his personality. But at the same time, I was like, how odd. Like, every time I ended up remembering that these people were wearing masks literally all the time, it just kind of like, it just broke my concentration constantly. Okay, so there's this thing called the Great Rite coming up. Feyre wants to go, and I'm like, why would you want to go? Like, every fairy except for Tamlin and like Lucian, maybe 70% of the time, wants to kill you. And they tell her to stay in her room, and she leaves anyway. I was like, obviously this isn't gonna go well, but this is going to be very entertaining. And I thought Tamlin was gonna save her. And then she runs into these 3 really creepy fairies, and then someone saves her. I turned to thank him. Standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Well, there goes Tamlin. As soon as I read that line, I was like, oh, okay, here's our new love interest. And I've seen this stuff on Instagram about the different teams, so I understand who's come into the picture right here. And at this point, I was a little upset because I really liked Tamlin. And like, from the beginning, I'm not gonna ruin it in case you haven't, but we've all heard the name that floats around with Feyre's, and I was like, I bet this is that dude. Lucian ends up finding her a little bit later down the road, and he like speeds her back to Tamlin's castle and like running. I'm picturing just this scene of Edward with Bella running super fast. Hold on tight, spider monkey. Apparently during this rite, Tamlin is going to be taken over by some sort of hunter spirit, and he's going to have to find someone to be with for the night who is the maiden. Lucian is like, that's not Tamlin, but Tamlin's obviously very attracted to Feyre, so he was going to go find her. It was a little messed up. And then Tamlin comes back and he's like, I was looking for you because I smelled you. So he knows that she snuck out too. You know, I kind of expected Feyre to be like kind of a sneaky type of girl, but she keeps getting found wherever she goes. Okay, I really liked the part where Tamlin got to show her like what he was hiding in the Fae world. So like this whole time, he has been kind of disguising all the servants and everybody so they appear a bit more human-ish to not freak her out. He takes her so that she can see all the nature without the powers he's used to dampen it down for her human senses, and like everything's so beautiful, it's like unbelievable, and she can like better see what he looks like, but she still can't take the mask off. And he's like, what do you think I'm like? And then she like was given, was it fairy wine? She's falling asleep and she tells him that like, you're exactly what I dreamed you would be. Do we have to do a love triangle? Do we have to? Do we have to? There's a mask. Why? Okay, so back at the palace, we find a head on a fountain. And Tamlin and Lucian do not seem concerned about this at all. A little traumatic for Feyre, as it should be for anybody else. And they're like, oh, this is one of the other courts playing games. And I'm like, TPing a house is playing games. Leaving a severed head on a water fountain isn't a game. But that precedes the arrival of Rysand. You cannot tell me this man's name is Rysand. We're going with Rysand. I do not care. But then his nickname is like Rys. No, I'm not calling him Rice. Why would I call this man Rice? Anyways, Rysand appears, and he's from the Night Court. And he's the one who saved her on Fire Great Ritual Night. He makes fun of Tamlin for not doing anything for the past 50 years, and it's a very specific amount of time. He's like, it's been 49 years. But we know that Tamlin's way older than this, so like, what is the significance here? And at first I thought it was just the blight, but it turns out there's a little bit more to it. And then Rysand says she's preparing for you. And so we still don't know who the she is yet. And we found out that her name is Amarantha. A lot of the time my brain just said Amanda. Just kind of flatten that one out. And they tried to hide Feyre from him, like kind of get his attention away, but like Rysand notices, obviously he saved her life. And it turns out he can also read her mind because he tells Tamlin like, hey, this girl's super into you. And Tamlin does a okay job holding his own. He definitely doesn't quite dominate the room the way Rysand does, but he does tell Rysand like, you have basically nowhere to speak because you are with Amarantha. And it's after this that Tamlin seems to be shaken out of whatever, you know, cocoon that he and Feyre have been in. He's like, you have to go home, like, right now. And he says it's not forever, but, like, he's a fairy. By the time he comes and picks her up, she could be dead. And then Tamlin says he loves her, like, right when he's putting her on the carriage to leave, says that he loves her, and she doesn't say it back. For literally unknown reasons. Like, she gives a little, like, whatever about not wanting to say that she loves him because she's leaving her or whatever. I do not care. Think about how the rest of this book could have gone had she have just said, we wouldn't need the rest of the series. I mean, I guess that makes it a win that she didn't, but like she goes back to her family. First of all, Nesta is onto her. Her horrible older sister is like, you did not go to our sick aunt. That's her cover story, is that she's been taking care of some sick aunt, and the reason they're rich all of a sudden is because of that inheritance from the aunt's death. And Elaine and her father have been, you know, glossed over by Tamlin's power, but Nesta for some reason wasn't, and she knows that Feyre has been lying, and so she tells Nesta everything that happened. Especially after learning that Nesta, who seems to hate her, went after her, trying to figure out where she was, and got blocked by the fairy world wall. Like, she couldn't go after her anymore. And I really like, I mean, despite their bad relationship, right before Feyre left, she said, do not marry Thomas Mandray, because it seemed like if she ended up marrying him, that would have been a very abusive and bad relationship. And Nesta's like, I broke it off with him, and Feyre asks her why. I realized he wouldn't have gone with me to save you from Prithian. I was like, okay, I can see this relationship becoming so good in the next couple books. I can't wait to see what happens with the sisters, because like, I like Elaine. I know a lot of people don't like her. She's just kind of, she's the innocent one, even though I believe she's the oldest. She just wants to plant flowers and stuff. Maybe she belongs in the spring court with Lucian. Oh my gosh, can you imagine imagine Lucian and Elaine together? Oh, I hope that happens. Who should Nesta be with? That's interesting. I bet it's somebody we haven't met yet. They have to go, all of them, to Fairy, right? Oh my gosh. Okay, so back when Rysand was in the court, he asked Farah what her name was, and she lied, and she said Claire Bedor, because that was someone they knew from their childhood. Turns out, Claire Bedor has been kidnapped, is missing. Her home was burned down, her entire family died, and that's what snaps Farah out of it, finally. She's been home for a while, and she's been, they've been trying to get their way back into genteel society and stuff like that, and the whole time she's like, okay, I'm just waiting for Tamlin, I'll wait, and then she realizes, like, if I had said my real name, like, she would be dead, her family would be dead, her house would be gone, and it's her fault that Claire's dead. She obviously didn't know that that was like a thing. She just didn't want to say her real name. But in having that super strong self-preservation instinct, she threw someone else under the bus to die. Farah decides to go back to the Fairylands, and she goes to the Spring Court, and she runs into the house, and it looks like it's been ransacked, and she's yelling around for Tamlin, and he's not there. Who is there is Alice, the woman who had been taking care of Farah when she was staying in Tamlin's house, and basically because Tamlin now belongs to Amarantha, she can talk more freely about this whole treaty business. So it turns out that there's this whole war, and Amarantha wanted Tamlin by her side as her lover when she was taking over a big part of the Fairylands, and Tamlin said he would rather be with a human than be with her, which hit pretty hard because Amarantha's own sister was killed by her human lover. In fact, she wears that human lover's eyeball on her finger and wears his finger around her neck like a necklace. She's also the one who took Lucian's eye out, so she put the blight on everything because Tamlin refused her and was like, okay, you can either be with me and the blight ends, or you have 50 years to get a human to fall in love with her. And that's why Lucian said, when Farah was about to leave, he was like, I'm disappointed in you. And it seemed a little out of the blue. I was like, is he just disappointed because, she's not being brave about this? He was disappointed that she didn't say she loved him back when she so clearly did. And the whole part of, Amarantha's thing, she's like, you'll marry, like, you have to fall in love with a mortal girl who kills a fairy. That's why Tamlin was sending out his men into the forest. That's why Andros was out there. He was sent out as a sacrificial lamb to possibly lure in a human girl that he would then have to fall in love with, despite having her kill one of his people. It's real messed up. And then she tells Alice, like, I'm going after Tamlin, and Alice is like, you're stupid, but okay. And she takes her to where Tamlin is. It's under the mountain, and it's all of like 5 seconds before Farah is found. Like, she clearly is not good at stealth. And she sees Claire Bedor's mangled body, and Tamlin apparently was able to keep a straight face the entire time she was dying, and that kind of tipped everybody off to like, maybe this isn't the girl he was in love with. And Amarantha and Farah strike a deal that if Farah can get through these trials that Amarantha has decided to set up, then she can take Tamlin and the blight will be over. But then she has some bones broken and such, and Amarantha's like, yeah, you're gonna have to deal with that. And throws her in prison until her first trial. And what's interesting is that Rysand took Claire Bedor knowing it wasn't Farah because he's seen Farah twice. He saved her and then saw her in the Spring Court. And Amarantha's like, how could you get that wrong? And he's like, humans all look the same to me. But they don't, because Farah's mentally like, he recognized me in the Spring Court. Like, he knows exactly what I look like. He took that girl instead and let her go. What a twist. Perhaps he's not horrible. Except then he did take Claire Bedor. And also, he has the power to hold minds. Like, he can make people do and say things. Interesting. And also, there's an out to the 3 trials, is that if Farah can figure out this riddle that Amarantha has given her, then it can all be over. And she said the riddle, I was like, it's gotta be something simple. It's gotta be like a theme of the book. And at first I was like, maybe it's humanity, maybe it's love. I was like, love seems a little too vague. But no. And it ended up working for me. Like, I didn't think it was, at first I was like, oh, if it's something super simple, that's gonna be dumb. And then it was love, and we're ahead of ourselves. So for her first challenge, I'm picturing like the Harry Potter maze, basically, but it's got levels to it, and it's a Middengard. It is a giant slug, and it's following her, and it can smell her. It cannot see, and that is important. Like the snake in Chamber of Secrets. And so Rysand is watching her, and he's like kind of narrating for us at this moment, because Farah is running around. She's setting up these spikes so that she can outrun the Midgard, and she goes down into his den and covers herself in crap. And Rexon's like, she just became invisible to this creature. And the fairies are all betting on her, like when she's gonna die, how long she's gonna last. Lucian does like yell out to her like where the Midgard was when she lost track of it. She kills the thing and it is disgusting, but she manages to do it. This whole time Tamlin is like not making a face at her. I don't know what's going on here. Barely making any eye contact. And it turns out everyone was betting against her except for one person who thought she was gonna win. Guess who it was? It was Rysand. Problem is, Farrah's gonna die from this broken arm that she has. I think there's a wound. I'm gonna guess it's blood poisoning, because I know what blood poisoning is, Katniss. And of course, Rysand comes in and he's like, I will fix your arm for you. And she's like, okay, what's the catch? And he says that she has to come stay with him for a week of every month for the rest of her life. And then she ends up with this giant tattoo that like marks her as his with a creepy eye on it. This is him shoving it back in Tamlin's face, basically, is that like he literally has marked his lover with a creepy dark blue tattoo. I didn't love the party thing. Rysand makes her drink so she forgets everything and dances with him. Like sometimes he's so nice, and then sometimes he is literally evil. Like that's literally evil. And she talks to Lucian and she was like, how bad was it? And he was like, it was pretty bad, but like it wasn't against you, it was against Tamlin. I was like, okay, but it's still like her. When she's in the second trial and there's like the spikes coming down, it's gonna kill them, and Lucian is down there and she's down there and she has to decipher this riddle to pick the right lever. If she picks the wrong one, all the spikes come down and they just die. And she doesn't know what to do because she can't read the riddle. And Lucian is yelling like, just pick one because they're gonna die anyways. Like where the tattoo is, she starts to feel like warning heat in her hand, so she picks the right one. So Rysand just cheated and let her out, and I mean we're glad it happened, you know, we're glad, but like I do not get it. Afterwards she's crying because trauma, and Rysand comes in, he licks her tear away, and I was like, I know that was meant to be an attractive move, and Farrah kind of feels a little bit of attraction because he is the most beautiful man she's ever met. But I was like, no. I know that fairies are, you know what, we're just gonna move on. Also, there is kind of this whole underlying thing that Tamlin has these crazy powers that have been suppressed because of the blight, and also we didn't tell Amarantha that if we got through the 3 trials, we would be released immediately. And then he was like, oh yeah, I didn't say release us immediately, but you know, maybe that's just not a problem. Man. Okay, so we get to the 3rd trial, and it's horrifying. She has to kill 3 fairies, and the first one broke my heart because he's just like begging her not to kill him, and I was like, I don't know if I would have it in me. So she gets the 2nd one, and this girl is a little more like accepting of her death, and then they pull the hood off the 3rd person, and it's Tamlin. She turns around. Tamlin, who is standing over here, is not Tamlin, it's the Ator? I don't know. And it says that Risk goes really pale. And I think it's partially because he really wants to be free too. Like, he doesn't like being Amarantha's slave. She's trying to think. She's like, there's a clue here. And she was like, Alice said that there was something that would help me. Like, something that she'd overheard that would help her through this trial. And then she remembers all these times that she's been eavesdropping on Tamlin's conversations and all these different things that people have said. And like, we know from past experiences that Farrah is not good at stealth. Like, she was allowed to be there to overhear those conversations, and the whole thing is, Tamlin, you have a heart of stone. Tamlin's heart of stone, blah, 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 blah. And he's a really nice dude. Like, he doesn't have a heart of stone. And so she's like, oh, like a real heart of stone. And then she stabs him because his heart is not going to stop beating because it is made of stone. And all the fairies are like, oh my gosh, we're free. And then Amarantha has a panic, and she starts breaking all of Farrah's bones. And she's like, you think you're like worthy of a high fae? And then she hears someone yell her name, and it's not Tamlin, it's Rysand. I'll get to my theory in a minute. Okay. And it's in this moment when she's about to die that she realizes the answer to the riddle is love. The answer to the riddle I got out choking on my own blood is love. Tamlin's eyes went wide before something forever cracked in my spine. So our main character dies on us, and we're seeing kind of like an out-of-body experience where all the fae are taking off their masks because they've been freed because of Amarantha's promise with the riddle. And all the fairies start dropping glitter on her. Rhysand even says, for what she gave, will bestow what our predecessors have granted to few before. And I kind of thought that it was just a second life, and then I realized she's a fae now. She gets to see Tamlin for realsies without the mask, and like in theory now she lives forever, right? Okay, and she was asleep, woke up, she's been summoned, and so we're guessing that's the bond with Rhysand? I don't remember. Rhysand has wings. We have established that. They were like bat wings though. And she even says, he's like, I just wanted to say bye. And she was like, not forever, like you still have your week a month. And she asks him like why he helped. And because Tamlin killed Amarantha with his golden powers. But she was wondering about why Rhysand helped her. And he really basically was like, I want to be on the right side of history. And also, I didn't want you to die. And right as they're saying goodbye for the end of this book. Let's recap what's happened here. Feyre has become a fae. Fae, at least according to the Throne of Glass world, have very specific soulmates that when they see them, they feel this weird connection and they know. And now, when they lock eyes, Rhysand stumbles and he looks super shocked. And he disappears into thin air. And I was like, guess what he just realized? He just realized that Feyre is his mate. As much as I love Tamlin, I was like, okay, like I could do this. Who doesn't love a morally great character? Though I do want someone to be with Tamlin. I think he's been through a lot. I just hope that love triangle doesn't drag on super long. The Throne of Glass love triangle got dragged out a little bit for me, to be honest. At least the first triangle of the triangles, if you know what I'm talking about. And I hope we don't have that here. I hope we just move on into the world of Rhysand pretty quickly in the second book. I really enjoyed this, probably like a 7 out of 10. I know it's gonna get better. Like, this has to set everything up, obviously. But I'm really interested. I want to see the sisters in Fairylands. I want to see Rhysand's court, which I think will be very interesting. Who is your favorite character? Let me know in the comments. I think mine is Lucian, maybe Rhysand. If you would like to follow me on social medias, I started like a new Bookstagram because my main account kind of is more artsy-ish. So that will be more official bookish stuff. And I will leave that link in the description below. My name's Katelyn. Thanks for watching. Bye.